Romans 1:18-32 presents Paul's unveiling of humanity's condition apart from the revelation of God's righteousness. The passage is not merely a catalog of sins, nor is it intended to create fear-driven religion. Instead, Paul is exposing the futility of life under the old world of Adamic consciousness and the inevitable collapse of humanity when it seeks identity, righteousness, and fulfillment apart from the life of God revealed in Christ. Paul begins by declaring that the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against ungodliness and unrighteousness. This wrath should not be understood as uncontrolled divine anger or emotional retaliation. Rather, it is God allowing humanity to experience the consequences of its own distorted thinking and rebellion. The repeated phrase, God gave them over, reveals this clearly. Divine judgment in this passage is not God actively inflicting evil upon people, but God permitting humanity to walk the path it has chosen apart from Him. The knowledge of God was evident within creation itself. Humanity was never without witness. The invisible qualities of God could be perceived through the created order, yet mankind exchanged the truth for illusion. Instead of living from the awareness of God's life and goodness, people turned inward towards self-made systems of identity, religion, philosophy, power, and desire. Their thinking became futile because separation from God always darkens perception. Paul describes humanity exchanging the glory of the incorruptible God for images resembling corruptible man, birds, animals, and creeping things. This exchange is the essence of idolatry. Idolatry is not limited to statues or temples. It is any attempt to derive meaning, righteousness, security, or life from created things instead of from God Himself. Humanity became enslaved to the very things it worshipped. The downward spiral Paul describes is the natural fruit of alienation from divine life. When people believe themselves separated from God, they inevitably seek fulfillment through external means. Desires become distorted because the human heart was never designed to function independently from divine communion. The moral collapse listed throughout the passage is therefore evidence of a deeper spiritual blindness rather than merely isolated acts of bad behavior. This passage also reflects the condition of the Old Covenant world that was reaching its climax in Paul's generation. Israel had been entrusted with the knowledge of God, yet much of the nation had fallen into the same patterns of corruption seen among the Gentiles. Paul's argument throughout Romans moves toward the conclusion that both Jew and Gentile stood equally in need of the righteousness revealed through Jesus Christ. The old age, governed by law, condemnation, and human striving, was passing away, while a new covenant reality was being unveiled through Christ. The wrath Paul speaks of can therefore also be understood in light of the impending covenantal judgment that was coming upon the old world order. The destruction associated with the end of the age was not the end of planet Earth, but the collapse of the old covenant system that had reached its fulfillment. Humanity's inability to produce righteousness through law, morality, philosophy, or religion was being fully exposed so that the sufficiency of Christ could be revealed. Paul's purpose is not to shame humanity endlessly, but to prepare the reader for the revelation of grace that follows throughout Romans. The darkness of Romans 1 sets the stage for the brilliance of God's righteousness apart from law in the chapters ahead. Humanity's condition could not be solved through stricter rules or greater religious effort. The answer was union with Christ. The sins listed near the end of the chapter demonstrate what life looks like when people live disconnected from their true identity in God. Envy, strife, violence, deceit, arrogance, and relational breakdown are symptoms of a fractured understanding of self and God. Humanity became trapped in cycles of death because it believed itself separated from the source of life. Yet the gospel announces that in Christ, God has reconciled the world to Himself. The exposure of darkness in Romans 1 is therefore not the final word. Paul is leading toward the revelation that righteousness is a gift, not an achievement. Humanity's failure became the backdrop against which the fullness of divine grace could be displayed. Romans 1:18-32 ultimately reveals the bankruptcy of human independence and the futility of seeking life apart from God. It exposes the collapse of the old Adamic order, while pointing toward the new creation reality revealed in Christ. The passage is not meant to leave people in condemnation, but to awaken them to the truth that true life, righteousness, and identity are found only through participation in the finished work of Jesus Christ.